Jort, a little jam session short, talking about the Suns' newest acquisition as a head coach. Jordan Ott. Ought we be worried? Now, this is the 23rd head coach that this organization has ever hired, and the fourth one in the past 4 years. And I know that there are Michigan State ties where people are standoffish about the idea that the Suns could hire somebody who has Michigan State ties. And it doesn't bother me. And I don't know why it bothers other people. Hey, dot zero, yes, I'm at work. It's lunchtime. I'm having myself like a nice bowl of soup. And I figure, you know what? I'm going to hang out and talk about the Suns' newest hire head coach, Jordan Ott, and whether or not we ought to be afraid. And I don't think so. I really think that this whole Michigan State thing is being way overblown. It's a talking point. It makes the Suns look on a slow news day comical, I would say, but I'm not opposed to it. Hey dot zero says as long as he does a good job, a 4 years contract is ridiculous. No, in all honesty, I think that 4 years is something that's the amount of time we need to give him to institute his culture. We got to stop having this revolving door at head coach, in my opinion, at least. And 4 years, probably not at a premium price, although we probably get some stock options at a United Wholesale Mortgage. But the roster that he's going to be handed is going to be a pretty gross roster, in my opinion, or at least the beginnings of a reset for this team and this franchise. And it's going to be hard to judge his ability as a head coach through that initial crumbling, if you will, of assets. Kevin Durant's going to be traded. What we get back still remains to be seen. Bradley Beal's not going to be here next year. There's probably going to be a buyout and stretch that buyout. Dead cap money, that's 5 years of being behind the cap in that space. And that's going to hurt in the short term and somewhat the long term. Obviously, that gets easier as time progresses because the cap's going to go up and that 16 million is going to remain the same. So what counts as 11% of your cap situation in 2025/6, by 2030, it's 7%. But still, that being said, this hiring is, in my opinion, it's a quality hiring. He's highly qualified. Yes, he went to Michigan State. And trust me, as a Notre Dame guy, not a huge fan of the Michigan State people. But at the same time, I can look past the talking heads. I can look past the green and white and say, this is what Matt Ishbia is trying to do and develop as an owner. And we as a fan base are going to go along with what Ishbia provides us as he learns the process of being an owner. And that's what this is. It's a process. His first step when he first came in here is, I'm just going to chuck money at it. I'm going to chuck as much money as this team. I'm going to buy myself a championship. Didn't work. And now he's reverting to his United Wholesale Mortgage ways and saying, you know what, I'm going to build this culture-wise. And that's why United Wholesale Mortgage is successful. They have a positive culture within the confines of their corporation. So now Ishbia's next step, obviously, is to bring in people he trusts, people who align with his culture, people who have a similar core values. And guess what? If you are a guy who went to Michigan State and that's your alma mater, you're probably going to align with some aspects, at least at a core value. Like walking by, one guy goes, go green, the other guy will go white. I mean, that's a Michigan State thing. So it's an aspect of who Jordan Ott is, but it shouldn't define who he is. What should define him is his experience as a head coach, and he has experience. Now, I like what Seth asks in the chat. He goes, is there a red line where he is after 1 year? There's, I'm sure, tentative goals, and there should be tentative goals with a head coach relative to progress. Now, progress might not be defined by wins and losses next season. Because again, Kevin Durant's gone. You trade him for some pieces. Bradley Beal's gone. You don't get anything for him but dead cap space. But what you're doing is you're beginning the retooling process of the Phoenix Suns. You're saying, okay, I'm going to get pieces back for Kevin Durant. I can take those pieces and break them into more pieces, kind of like DeAndre Ayton, right? We're going to take the DeAndre Ayton contract and we're going to break it up, and then we're going to break it up further until it's at the point where every one of those pieces is tradable for either contracts or expiring contracts, which opens up cap space, or draft picks. Now, obviously, it didn't work in DeAndre Ayton case. It was piss poor management with DeAndre Ayton because he traded for Yusuf Nurkic, who was a quality center in the league, but at the same time, his head coach quit on him as the season progressed, which is not what you wanted, right? So you're going to be in this process next year of of a retooling around Devin Booker, who signed off on Jordan Ott as a head coach, and you're going to essentially say, "Hey, we just need you to go out there and right the ship, start to change the culture, player development, which is where Jordan Ott has made his money up to this point." You say, "You got Ryan Dunn, you got Oso Ighodaro, you got the 29th pick in the draft, the 52nd pick in the draft. You trade Kevin Durant, maybe get another pick in there, and you're starting with a younger core that needs player development, and that's what you put those milestones relative to Ott's performance around. How well do these players develop? How well does Ryan Dunn look next year in this new system?" And yes, Stephanie, I am at work. It's lunchtime. I'm gonna let my soup cool a little bit before I eat my soup and get back to work. But again, let's see. Hey, Nazir, we can actually trade Beal if this front office actually knows how to trade him to a team that will think he's gold. Well, don't expect that. If Brian Gregory comes in here and pulls off a trade for Bradley Beal, I think we all would be impressed. I don't see it happening, but imagine if he could do that. You want to talk about a way to instantly gain the backing of the fan base? Do that. Do that. Man, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? I'm not whispering, I'm just talking normal. Normally I have a microphone in my face that amplifies my voice, and I also have like people who work around me in other offices, so I don't want to be like too loud and annoying to them. But again, Ott, Bryant, whichever guy we chose, it's a step in the right direction because you are pivoting, and that's the other annoying thing about the Michigan State thing. Everybody's like, well, Ishbu said he was going to change, and he hired Gregory internally as bringing in one of his MSU boys. It's still a change, is it not? It's not James Jones, it's Brian Gregory. It's not Mike Budenholzer. It's a completely different archetype than Mike Budenholzer. And I think that's the value and lesson learned in this situation is the team is pivoting. They're pivoting the way that they manage their front office, and hopefully it's going to garner results. But we need to be patient with the results. That's the biggest thing. That's the realization. And I mentioned this a little bit on last night's podcast, but I'll reiterate it here. There's 3 things that this team needs to accomplish. They need to get out of that second apron because it's unbelievably restrictive. They need to have some short-term flexibility, and by short-term, I mean the next 3 years. And that means trading Durant and getting contracts that are more digestible and potentially ones that you can move again, so you can open up more cap space to make yourself more viable again. And you need to be competitive. But all 3 aren't mutually exclusive. We might not be competitive next year, at least in the sense of wins and losses. We might be competitive in the way that they play basketball. And the hope is you can build a roster, getting out of the second apron, and having your short-term flexibility in mind to be competitive. But not all 3 things are mutually exclusive. And Suns fans, we just need to start to accept that. And the hope is Ishbia has accepted that, because that spending spree that he went on, it has implications. It has consequences. And those consequences are for the next 2 to 3 years. This team is going to have to dig themselves out of the grave that they dug themselves into. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not all of a sudden you hire a new head coach, you trade Kevin Durant, and we're going to win the finals. We're further away from the finals than when we traded for Kevin Durant. That's a sad, sobering realization, but you have to recognize and realize that. So I'm going to go back to eating my lunch. Just wanted to check in with the Jamsters out there, post this hire. I know Matthew and I, we're not going to go live on the podcast for probably another week. But that being said, if you listen to the radio locally, AM 1060 radio, the Sports Zoo with Rooster, I do go on there for about 15 minutes every Wednesday afternoon. So 5:35, I will be there giving some more of my thoughts as well. But thank you as always for your support and watching the show. And make sure you hit a thumbs up and like and all that stuff. And go home and love your family. Yep.